Why is child behavior getting worse over the years? We've got a lot to talk about there. I'm Nicholeen Peck, and I teach all over the world about parenting, good communication, calmness, how to build strong family bonds, child development, and education, all through the lens of the principle self-government. And in this video, we're talking about what we are seeing with behavior trends. Many people have noticed that behaviors in children are getting worse over the years. They recognize that their children are behaving differently than they remember behaving when they were children. They might see some similarities too, but by and large, they feel like things are getting worse. Why is that? What's leading to that? That's what we're talking about here. We could just make a real long list of what has changed in parenting over the years. So I have raised all of my children to adulthood. I also did therapeutic treatment care for troubled teens. So when I was a young mom, teens came into my home and I helped them. They were a different generation of child than my children were. And now I'm a grandmother and I'm seeing yet another generation of child and what differences there are in that generation. So there are multiple things that affect the generation of children. Of course, there's the nature and the nurture for every person, but what we're really talking about here is nurturing. What is going on societally, culturally, within our communities and our nations that is impacting the children, and what might also be going on within the homes that is making a difference in the way that the children are behaving to their parents and to other people. Let's start with the first item, which is what is happening socially that might be impacting our children. So socially, we are raising our children in a time full of screens, full of AI, full of easy ways to find information. This leads to detachment from humans, from other people, which can lead to problems in bonding with parents and children. It also leads to addiction. So there are many children who have habits and addictions that we didn't even dream would be a thing for children about 15 years ago when we started putting phones into children's hands. Our children have been raised in an experimental world and they've had to navigate, do I want to fit in with everybody? Do I not? Is that okay? Are my parents mean if they don't give me a phone? Do I argue for the phone? And they've put their hearts and their attentions on all of these digital devices, which has created major issues in their academic achievement, but really, really in their relationships and in their behavioral progression. So what do we do about that? Well, we're going to talk about that, but before we do, let's talk about what's happening within the home. So in the home and within the parent-child relationship, there are also changes that have occurred. Parents used to have a pretty predictable playbook for how you raise children. Now, of course, there might be a few things that are changing, like, oh, now we have radio, or now we have TV, or now we have lots of extracurricular activities. But by and large, most parents stuck to the same principles. They were going to help develop their child's values and their character and teach them proper manners. They were going to teach them to be in control of themselves and to rein themselves in, to take responsibility for their behaviors. But now parents are parenting from a place of entitlement, and they're actually raising children who, no surprise, end up experiencing a lot of entitlement issues. So what do I mean by parents are parenting from a place of entitlement? What does that even look like? Well, there are many parents who have really convinced themselves or have been convinced through social media or other avenues that the way they feel is one of the most important things in their lives, and that their children's feelings are also massively important. Now, of course, feelings are important. They're a big part of being a human and a person. They can teach us a lot of things about ourselves. They can be signals for when something needs to change. I'm not saying feelings are bad, but if we become overly focused on our feelings and obsessed with our feelings, then we become selfish, and we automatically start disconnecting from our roles and our responsibilities and other people around us. And so there are many parents who focus more on how they're feeling in the moment. They withdraw from parenting interactions, or maybe even they have just never learned how to handle those parenting interactions. So this leads me to another thing that's happening within the homes is a lack of skill development. There are a lot of parents who just simply do not know what skills they need to help their child have correct behaviors and for how to correct the problem behaviors when those things occur. And this is because socially speaking, we have lost that dialogue and we haven't passed on good skills to each other. We used to always do that. Our societies were definitely more agrarian. All of the skills for how to sustain life and have good relationships were part of the same skill set. Well, we now don't have that agrarian, more Georgic or work-based view of life, and we don't see ourselves as having to do work to solve problems. Instead, what we do is we say, that person's having a problem. Well, sheesh, what's their problem? Who did that to them? We look for somebody to blame. Even parents will look for a child to blame, a device to blame, instead of saying, wait, maybe my child was not taught something that they need, or they need some more teaching. I'm going to step in and do that teaching instead. Because here's the deal. They don't even know what to teach. They don't know how to diagnose the problems. If a parent can't diagnose the problem, they can't get to what the child actually needs to learn to solve the problem. So having a basic understanding of skills could be vital. Now, all of this happened within the parenting because there were new voices that came in on the parenting scene back in the late 50s and early 60s. We had Dr. Benjamin Spock, who was like a leading expert on parenting, who really warped the idea of what parenting was. And since then, we've never really recovered. He said that parents were supposed to be their child's friend and not their parents. And so then that left society to be the parent, the school to be the parent, the friends to be the parent. Someone is going to fill that role of parent for the child. And so the children ended up getting kind of abandoned and lost. Parents did not see a need to be with their children as often. And so they removed themselves from a lot of the parenting interactions and just turned it over to other people in the community, thinking that they could do a similar job. And what happens when that occurs is that the child does not get the vital bonding that they need, and they don't get the training that they need. Let's talk more about this training in my next video called Child Behavior Problems and Solutions. I'll see you there.